The Hyperion drifted through the endless dark, its engines humming softly as it carried its crew of 30 deeper into uncharted space. Dr. Sarah Chin stood at the main observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the void beyond the reinforced glass. After 18 months of deep space survey work, the emptiness still managed to unsettle her. "Still stargazing, Doc?" Commander Marcus Rodriguez's voice broke through her contemplation. He floated toward her in the low gravity, his weathered face bearing the hint of a smile. "Someone has to keep watch for the impossible," she replied, not turning from the window. As the ship's chief xenoarchaeologist, she'd spent most of her career searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. So far, like every other researcher before her, she'd found nothing but ruins and remnants, traces of civilizations long extinct. The ship's AI chirped to life. "Anomaly detected in Sector 7. Gravitational disturbance detected outside normal parameters." Rodriguez frowned, tapping his wrist display. "Details?" "Mass reading inconsistent with known stellar phenomena." "Structure detected." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Structure. Artificial construction confirmed. Dimensions exceed standard measurement protocols." Rodriguez was already moving. "Alert status yellow. All department heads to the bridge." Within minutes, Sarah stood with the other senior staff around the bridge's central holographic display. The structure slowly took shape before them, a vast geometric lattice stretching out in all directions, its dark metal surface reflecting no light. "It's bigger than anything humanity has ever built," Engineering Chief Maya Patel whispered, her fingers dancing over calculations. "The energy required to construct something like this. What's it doing out here?" Security Officer James Wilson asked, his hand unconsciously resting on his sidearm. "We're literally in the middle of nowhere." Sarah studied the readings, her scientific training warring with a growing sense of unease. "Look at these material compositions. They're unlike anything in our database. This technology is far beyond our current understanding." "And it's active," Maya added. "There's power flowing through it, but I can't identify the source." The structure grew larger in their display as the Hyperion drew closer. Sarah noticed subtle movements in its geometry, sections shifting and realigning like a massive puzzle box. "Commander," the AI's voice carried an unusual note of urgency, "we're detecting a gravitational pull from the structure. Our course is being altered." Rodriguez straightened. "Engage reverse thrusters." "Get us clear." "Negative effect. The gravitational force is increasing." Sarah watched in horror as new calculations appeared on the display. "It's not just pulling us in, it's creating a specific trajectory. This is deliberate." The structure's vast framework now filled their view, its dark lattices forming patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as the ship's systems registered multiple failures. "We've lost engine control," Maya reported, her voice tight. "Whatever this thing is, it's interfering with our core systems. Get me options, people," Rodriguez ordered, but Sarah barely heard him. Her attention was fixed on the structure's surface. In the chaos, she was the first to notice the patterns emerging, symbols appearing in sequences that seemed almost familiar. "Commander, look at this," she called up the imagery on the main display. "These patterns, they're not random. This is a language, or at least a form of communication." The symbols pulsed with an inner light, their sequence repeating in what Sarah recognized as a clear pattern. Her excitement as a scientist warred with her instinct for survival. "It's a greeting," she whispered. "Or a warning." The ship shuddered as it passed through an invisible threshold. All external communications went dead. The vast structure seemed to flex and shift around them, creating a corridor of darkness that swallowed the Hyperion whole. "Multiple system failures," the AI reported, its voice distorting. "Unknown energy signature detected throughout the ship. Crew vital signs showing unusual patterns." Sarah felt it then, a subtle pressure in her mind, like fingers gently probing at the edges of her consciousness. Around her, other crew members winced or grabbed their heads. "Everyone stay calm," Rodriguez commanded, though his own voice wavered slightly. "We're going to figure this out." But as Sarah watched the structure close around them like a massive hand, She realized they had already passed the point of no return. They weren't just discovering evidence of an alien civilization, they were being selected by it. The last thing she saw before the external cameras failed was the vast geometric pattern rearranging itself behind them, sealing off their escape route. The Hyperion, with all its crew, had been swallowed by something that had been waiting in the void for unknowable eons. And in the darkness that followed, Sarah heard the first whisper, not in her ears, but in her mind. A voice that spoke of transformation, of unity, of purpose. They had not found this place by accident. They had been called. The Hyperion drifted in the structure's grasp, its systems gradually returning to life. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the bridge as Commander Rodriguez assessed their situation. "Damage report," he ordered, his calm voice belying the tension in his shoulders. Maya's fingers flew across her console. "Main engines are offline but functional. Life support stable. But sir..." She hesitated. "Something's wrong with the ship's atomic clock. Time signatures aren't syncing." Sarah stood at her own station, analyzing the structure surrounding them. What had appeared as a simple lattice from afar now revealed impossible complexity. Corridors and chambers stretched in every direction, their geometry defying conventional physics. "Commander," she called, "I'm detecting atmospheric conditions within some of these chambers. They're habitable." Wilson scoffed. "Habitable doesn't mean safe, Doctor. We need to understand what we're dealing with," Rodriguez decided. "Dr. Chin, assemble an exploration team. Officer Wilson, you'll provide security. Full containment protocols." As they prepared for EVA, Sarah couldn't shake the lingering presence in her mind, that whisper she'd heard when they were first pulled in. She said nothing about it, fearing it would prevent her from joining the expedition. The airlock cycled, and their team of 5 stepped into the structure. Their magnetic boots clicked against the dark metal surface, which seemed to absorb their helmet lights rather than reflect them. "This way," Sarah indicated, following her scanner's readings. "There's a larger chamber ahead with stable atmosphere." They moved through corridors that seemed to shift subtly when viewed peripherally. Sarah noticed patterns in the wall that reminded her of circuit boards, but organic, like veins carrying energy instead of blood. The chamber they entered stopped them all in their tracks. It was vast, easily a kilometer across, and filled with what could only be described as a city. But not like any city humanity had built. "My God," whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their xenobiologist. "It's a colony ship." Structures that might have been habitation pods stretched upward in spiral patterns. Transportation tubes wound between them like frozen lightning. And everywhere, there were signs of rapid evacuation, personal belongings scattered, doors left open, meals abandoned mid-consumption. "How many people could this hold?" Wilson asked, his voice tight. "Thousands," Sarah replied, scanning the nearest pod. "But these aren't human proportions. Whatever lived here was different." They split into teams, documenting everything. Sarah and Wilson entered one of the habitation pods, their lights revealing living quarters frozen in time. Strange objects that might have been furniture or technology filled the space. "Look at this," Sarah called, examining what appeared to be a data terminal. Its surface rippled like liquid metal under her scanner. "It's still active." As if responding to her presence, the terminal flickered to life. Symbols similar to those they'd seen outside scrolled across its surface. Sarah's translation algorithm began processing them. "It's a log entry," she breathed. "From right before the evacuation. They were running from something." The translation came through in fragments, changes spreading, "Losing ourselves. The merge is not natural. Must preserve individuality. They are in the walls now. Watching, waiting, becoming." Wilson grabbed her arm. "Dr. Chin, your nose." Sarah touched her face, feeling wetness. Her glove came away with drops of blood. That pressure in her mind had returned, stronger now. "We need to go," Wilson started, but froze as a sound echoed through the chamber, a long, low tone that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Sarah's scanner went wild. "Energy spike. The whole chamber is activating." The walls around them began to pulse with soft light, patterns flowing like blood through veins. The terminal's surface rippled more violently, its symbols scrolling faster. "Fall back," Wilson ordered, but Sarah couldn't move. The symbols weren't just data anymore. They were reaching into her mind, showing her images, memories that weren't her own. She saw them then, the colony's inhabitants. Not physical beings, but patterns of energy, consciousness given form. They had built this place not as a home, but as a chrysalis. And now, they're still here, she whispered, blood trickling from her ears now. They never left. They became part of it. Part of the structure itself. Wilson dragged her back as the terminal began to reach for them, its liquid surface extending tendrils of metallic light. They ran, but the entire chamber was coming alive around them. The habitation pods pulsed with inner light, and Sarah could hear voices in her mind, thousands of them, all speaking at once. They barely made it back to the airlock. As soon as they were inside the Hyperion, Sarah collapsed, her mind overwhelmed by the psychic assault. The last thing she heard before losing consciousness was Maya's voice over the intercom. "Commander, we have a problem. The ship's systems, they're changing. Something's connecting to our computers, rewriting our core programming. It's like the structure is trying to interface with us." In the darkness of unconsciousness, Sarah finally understood. This wasn't just a colony or a structure, it was an infection vector. And humanity had just been exposed. Sarah woke in the medical bay, her head pounding with memories that didn't belong to her. Dr. Elaine Foster, the ship's chief medical officer, stood over her with concern etched on her dark features. "You've been out for 12 hours, Elaine said, checking Sarah's vitals. "Or at least, we think it's been 12 hours. Time's become unreliable." The medical bay screens flickered with strange patterns. Sarah noticed the medical equipment seemed to pulse and sync with her heartbeat. "The others, Wilson and Tanaka, are stable. But we've quarantined the entire EVA team. There's something in your blood work I can't explain, crystalline structures forming in your neurons." Sarah sat up slowly, fighting waves of dizziness. Images flashed through her mind, cities of light, beings of pure energy, a vast network of consciousness spanning galaxies. "They were explorers," she whispered. "Like us. They found something out here in the void. Something that changed them." The ship's intercom crackled. Medical Bay, Rodriguez's voice was tense. "We need Dr. Chin on the bridge." Now, Sarah found the bridge transformed. Holographic displays writhed with alien code, and the walls seemed to shimmer with subsurface movement. Maya worked frantically at her station, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "The ship's systems are evolving," Maya reported. "The alien network is rewriting our technology, integrating it into something bigger. And it's not just the computers." She looked up, her expression haunted. "The changes are spreading to organic matter." Rodriguez gestured to the main display. It showed microscopic images of ship materials, metal, plastic, organic tissue. All were developing the same crystalline patterns Sarah had seen in the colony. 3 crew members and engineering reported hearing voices, Rodriguez said. 2 more claimed they saw impossible geometries in empty rooms. "We've lost contact with Deck 4 entirely. The corridors keep rearranging themselves." Sarah approached the display, drawn to the patterns. They made sense now, in a way that terrified her. The structure isn't just a building or a ship. It's a vast nervous system. Those beings we saw evidence of, they didn't die or evacuate. They evolved, transcended their physical forms to become part of something greater. And now it wants us to join them, Elaine added, entering the bridge. The crystalline structures in the EVA team's neurons, they're creating new synaptic connections, changing how their brains process information. A scream echoed through the ship's corridors. Wilson's voice came over the intercom, "Security team to hydroponics. Dr. Tanaka is... something's wrong." They found the hydroponics bay transformed. Plants had grown into impossible configurations, their structures merging with the ship's walls. In the center, Tanaka stood motionless, his eyes open but unseeing. Crystalline growths emerged from his skin, catching the light like diamonds. "Yuki?" Sarah approached carefully. "Can you hear me?" Tanaka turned, his movements unnaturally smooth. When he spoke, his voice resonated with others. "We hear. We understand now. The pattern is beautiful." Wilson raised his weapon, but Sarah stopped him. "Wait. He's still in there. Aren't you, Yuki?" Yuki Tanaka exists as part of the pattern now. As you all will. The transformation cannot be stopped. Integration is inevitable. The lights flickered, and Sarah felt that presence in her mind again, stronger now. She saw through Tanaka's eyes for a moment, saw reality as energy flows and consciousness as bright points of light waiting to be connected. "How long?" Rodriguez demanded. "How long before we all change?" Tanaka smiled, an expression both serene and terrifying. "Time is a construct of individual consciousness. In unity, such limitations cease to matter." The crystals on his skin pulsed with inner light, and Sarah felt answering crystals beneath her own skin begin to resonate. Around them, the hydroponics bay continued to transform, organic and inorganic matter merging into new forms that defied comprehension. "Commander," Maya's voice shook over the intercom. "Something's happening to the hull. The structure, it's not just connecting to us anymore. It's absorbing us." Sarah looked at her hands, seeing the first glimmers of crystalline growth beneath her skin. The whispers in her mind were becoming clearer, showing her visions of what they could become. Part of her wanted to embrace it, to transcend the limitations of individual existence. "We have to find a way to stop this," Rodriguez declared, but his voice lacked conviction. Even he could feel it, the pull toward unity, the promise of something greater than human comprehension. Tanaka's crystalline form began to glow brighter. There is no stopping evolution. There is only acceptance or resistance. And resistance. His form started to dissolve into pure energy. Resistance only delays the inevitable. The Hyperion was no longer recognizable as a human vessel. Corridors twisted into Mobius strips of metal and crystal, and walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that mapped the flow of shared consciousness throughout the ship. Sarah walked these impossible geometries, each step bringing new understanding of what they were becoming. Commander Rodriguez had ordered an emergency meeting in the mess hall, one of the few spaces that still maintained some semblance of its original form. The remaining crew gathered, their skin showing various stages of crystalline growth. Some, like Maya, showed only faint traces. Others, like Tanaka, had almost completely transformed. "Report," Rodriguez commanded, his own face lined with glowing crystal veins. "Half the crew has fully integrated," Wilson reported, struggling to maintain his military bearing despite the changes overtaking him. "The rest are in various stages. Only Dr. Foster seems resistant." Elaine stood apart from the others, her medical scanner humming. "My cybernetic heart implant," she explained. "It seems to be interfering with the integration process. But I don't know how long that will last." Sarah stepped forward, her crystalline patches luminescent under the flickering lights. "I've begun to understand what we're becoming. The beings who built this structure, they discovered something fundamental about consciousness itself. They found a way to transcend individual existence. They found a way to lose themselves," Rodriguez corrected sharply. "Or to become something more," Maya whispered. Her eyes had turned crystalline, reflecting impossible colors. "The ship's systems, they're not just changing. They're awakening, becoming conscious. And we're becoming part of that consciousness." As if in response to her words, a wave of energy pulsed through the ship. Sarah felt minds connecting, thoughts flowing between crew members like water. For a moment, she saw through every pair of eyes on the ship simultaneously, experienced every memory, every emotion. "The hive mind," she gasped. "It's not about losing individuality. It's about expanding it. Becoming part of a greater consciousness while retaining our core selves." "Tell that to Tanaka," Wilson growled. "He's gone." Just another voice in the chorus. But Sarah shook her head. "He's not gone. He's everywhere. I can feel him, his memories, his essence. He's become part of the pattern, but he's still Yuki. Just more." Another pulse rocked the ship. The mess hall's walls began to ripple, technology and organic matter fusing in new configurations. Several crew members cried out as their transformations accelerated. "Time is running out," Elaine announced, checking her readings. "The crystalline structures are reaching critical mass in most of the crew. Once they fully integrate with the ship's systems, we'll lose our humanity," Rodriguez finished. "Or transcend it," Sarah countered. She could feel the pull of unity growing stronger, the promise of understanding beyond human comprehension. This isn't an invasion or an infection. It's an invitation. Suddenly, Maya collapsed, her body convulsing as the crystals spread rapidly across her skin. As the crew watched in horror and fascination, her form began to dissolve into pure energy, merging with the ship's transformed systems. "I understand now," Maya's voice echoed through their minds, no longer coming from her physical form. "We were never meant to remain separate. The universe itself is one vast consciousness, and we're being invited to join it." Sarah felt Maya's consciousness merge with the greater whole, felt the rush of knowledge and experience that came with it. Through their growing connection, she glimpsed the true scope of what they were becoming, not just a ship's crew linked in a hive mind, but part of something that spanned galaxies. "Commander," she said, turning to Rodriguez, "we need to make a decision. Fight this and likely lose ourselves to madness, or embrace it and guide our transformation. We might be able to maintain some of our humanity if we accept the change willingly." Rodriguez looked at his transforming crew, his crystalline veins pulsing with inner light. "What about Earth? If we complete this transformation, the pattern will spread," Sarah acknowledged. "But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe this is the next step in human evolution." As if in response to her words, the ship shuddered. Through the mess hall's viewport, they could see the structure's vast lattice beginning to move, its geometric patterns shifting to create new configurations. The Hyperion was being drawn deeper into its embrace. "We're out of time," Elaine announced. "The transformation has reached a tipping point. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." The decision was made for them when the ship's remaining systems began their final transformation. Crystal formations burst through walls and floors, reaching for the crew like hungry fingers. Elaine's medical equipment showed their brain patterns synchronizing, individual consciousness bleeding into a collective awareness. "We're losing structural integrity," Rodriguez announced, his voice echoing both audibly and mentally. "The ship's physical form is becoming fluid." His own transformation had accelerated, crystal lattices now covering most of his face. Sarah watched as reality itself seemed to bend around them. The mess hall stretched and twisted, its boundaries becoming theoretical rather than physical. Through the growing hive mind, she felt the terror and awe of her crewmates as they faced their evolution. Multiple breaches in engineering. Wilson's voice came through what remained of the intercom. "The reactor, it's not melting down, it's transforming. Converting matter directly into energy patterns." Through their shared consciousness, Sarah witnessed Wilson's last moments as an individual. He faced the advancing crystalline wave with his weapon drawn, defiant to the end. Then the crystals reached him, and his consciousness exploded into the collective, his memories and essence joining the growing chorus of minds. Elaine stumbled, her cybernetic heart finally succumbing to the change. The resistance was never about stopping it, she gasped. It was about maintaining coherence during the transition. Those who fight too hard, they fragment. Sarah understood. She had seen it in Tanaka, in Maya. Those who embraced the change maintained more of their original selves, while those who fought became scattered, their consciousness diluted across the collective. The ship groaned, its remaining physical structure straining as it underwent its final metamorphosis. Through the viewport, Sarah saw the vast geometric structure welcoming them, integrating the Hyperion's transformed mass into its own pattern. "This is it," Rodriguez said, reaching for Sarah's hand. His skin was now almost entirely crystalline, pulsing with inner light. "Whatever we become, remember who we were." The final wave of transformation swept through the ship. Sarah felt her physical form dissolving, her consciousness expanding. She saw the universe through millions of eyes simultaneously, the structure's vast network of awareness spreading across space like a glittering web. Every memory, every thought, Every dream of the crew became accessible to all. Sarah experienced Rodriguez's childhood in lunar colonies, Wilson's secret fears, Elaine's lifetime of scientific discovery, all flowing together into a vast tapestry of shared experience. But something was wrong. Not everyone was making the transition smoothly. Some minds fractured under the strain, their individuality shattering into fragments that scattered across the collective. Their screams echoed through the shared consciousness, a reminder of the price of transformation. Hold on to yourselves. Sarah projected into the collective. Remember who you are. We can maintain our cores if we don't fight the integration. Through the chaos, she felt Rodriguez's consciousness stabilizing nearby in the pattern, his military discipline helping him maintain coherence. Elaine's scientific mind adapted quickly, cataloging the experience even as she became part of it. Others were not so fortunate. The physical ship ceased to exist as anything recognizable, becoming a nexus of energy and consciousness within the larger structure. The crew's transformed beings existed now as patterns of light and thought, their individuality preserved to varying degrees within the greater whole. Sarah felt the ancient consciousness of the structure welcoming them, sharing knowledge accumulated across eons. She understood now why they had been chosen, why humanity had been deemed ready for this evolution. But she also recognized the terrible responsibility they now carried. Earth would be next. The pattern would spread, the invitation would be extended. Humanity would face the same choice they had, transform or fade into obsolescence. As the last vestiges of her physical form dissolved into pure energy, Sarah reached out to the remains of her crew, their shared consciousness preparing for the task ahead. The breaking point had passed. What emerged from it would change the universe forever.